Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for tuning in for Sealaska Heritage Institute's Virtual Artist in Residence Q&A. My name is Jay Zeller, and I work at SHI, and it's my pleasure to introduce Sondra Segundo. She's a published author, artist, and singer of the Haida language. She is an educator and has worked in schools and programs throughout the Northwest, teaching art and sharing her stories and songs. Musically, Sondra sings with tribal funk band Kuich. She released her first album, Digu Dung Ai U Sigai, I Can Feel the Ocean, in 2018, and her second album, Sand Lanai, The First Light, in 2020. She was awarded the Enduring Spirit Award, which recognizes the lifetime achievements of Native women who through their commitment of time, energy, and volunteerism contribute to the healthy communities. Sondra's book, Killer Whale Eyes, can be purchased in the Sealaska Heritage Store online, and all purchases support both the artist and SHI art programming that helps the community and keep our ancient art practices alive. If you have any questions, type them in the comments and I'll read them off to our guest. Sondra, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Ajay, good job on introducing those Haida names. Hata la is dung lung es andi hangogung. Good people, I'm honored to be here and I'm honored with your presence. Nakatla Viola Morrison dinank ayas u ijin. Viola Morrison is my great-grandmother. Margaret Kogo dinan u ijin. Duncan Kogo di chin u ijin. Margaret and Duncan Kogo are my grandparents. Vicky Iskan Thomas Segundo di Yalang u Ijung. Thomas and Vicky are my parents. Haida handla es us nagang. Heidelberg es us nagang. Sealaska u di Ijung. Di u hat agung. Hans Hill Klistang u Ijung. Yak lanas, yak janas gust u di kwalaga. I'm Sondra Segundo, Cunningham Hinudikyang, Gadal Kingwan Hat Kith Hinudikyang. I'm so excited to be here. I come from, my people are from Heidelberg, Alaska. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother, and I live now in Seattle. I come from the Double Fin Killer Whale, Crest, and Raven clan, and I'm excited to be here to share.
Let's start off with our first question of the night. We're talking about your various books that you've written. So can you tell us how you got into writing books?
Sure. 15 years ago, I have always been a storyteller. Ever since I was little, I would tell stories to my little sister, just make them up on the go. Even had her believing that we had little people living in our carpets. And it just, as I became a teacher and a mother, I would just tell stories to the kids and they really enjoyed it. And I always had this story in the back of my mind about my book, Killer Whale Eyes, about this young girl who had a powerful connection to the orca whales. And it was basically the story of how double fin killer whale Crest came to be. But I changed the character to have one fin. I didn't want to dishonor any other double fins by telling a story that is very sacred. But I took stories that I've heard over the years and I created my own stories because I just feel like that's what we'd still be doing today if colonization never happened. And so in the story, it's about a young girl who was swept away into the ocean. If you've never read it, but she became an orca whale. And what I realized later, it was pretty much a story about what I was going through in my life. I really found a lot of freedom from, you know, things that were going on in my life, relationship that wasn't healthy, and you know, I stopped drinking, and I realized like alcohol wasn't a good thing for me, and so I just had to let that go. And so I found a lot of freedom from things that were trying to destroy me. And so that's what this painting came out to be, is just showing the freedom, but also it was her showing her freedom of, you know, connecting with her, or the orca cousins and family. And so I just started writing. I wrote the book real quick. It just flowed out of me onto the paper. That's how all my stories come out of me. They just manifest in my mind, and I put them out on paper, and then slowly but surely I finished all the art pieces, and then the song in each book really became a powerful component in the storytelling.
That is a perfect segue into our next question, which is, what is your thought process in what story to do first?
You know, I was thinking about that because I had a sequel to Killer Whale Eyes where it was called Kunjadas Has a Baby, and Kunjadas is the character in the book, which means whale girl. And so I wanted to write a sequel to the book called Kunjadas Has a Baby, and it just never came to be. I never felt inspired to start working on that book. But I was excited to work on the book I wrote about my grandparents, which is The True Story of Raven and Eagle, which is the story of lovebirds. And I was just excited to write about them and do the artwork. And so it basically, what book comes next is what I'm excited to do. And so after that came Kundlan the Wolf Pup, and I'm working on that right now. And then I got a grant to work on that. And then my son and I are working on a book. And the sequel to this book, Kunjadas Has a Baby, is starting to become exciting for me because my daughter just had a baby. My daughter's name is Kunjadas. And in Kunjadas Has a Baby, she has a boy, but my daughter had a girl. So I'm excited to change it to girl and incorporate my granddaughter in the book, which is amazing to me because she looks just like the baby in my book, even with the blue eyes and the dark hair. My cousin said, "Wow, you're good at manifesting things, cousin." She's like, "You manifested your own Haida grandbaby." My daughter had nothing to do with it.
All right. My next question is, how did you find your way to get published for your first book? And can you offer any advice to new writers?
Well, I sent my first book out and I got a bunch of rejections. And my mom said, "Why don't you reach out to Sealaska?" And so I reached out to Sealaska. And at the time, it was before any children's books came on board. And so, you know, it was perfect timing. I mean, just talk about timing. They were excited Sealaska was excited to publish the book and flew me up to Juneau for celebration. And we had a big book release. It was back in 2014. It was my first time to celebration. That was so exciting. And so now after that, you know, I was hoping you guys would publish Lovebirds as well, but there was already the Raven Reads series coming about and everything, so much was going on. But Sealaska really taught me how to, you know, self-publish. And I self-published this book, and I'll send it out to publishers here and there and see what happens. But I really like having control of my sales and where my books go to. I made a really big Makoshu Tribal School made a really big purchase for their students. And so it's exciting because I'm the sole owner of these books and even the art and everything in them. And so it's nice to have that freedom to be able to sell the books how I want to. But it would be nice to get them into more broader worldwide markets. So that would be the next step. So if anybody out there has any advice for me. But KDP has a really good process of publishing books and having them printed so you can sell them.
Awesome, thank you. Speaking of the artwork in your books, do you do it before you write the story or after?
Definitely after. I have a huge process. I write the book and then I break them up into paragraphs and then I put them on different pages. I have some right here. Yeah, so like here's a page that I did with a little puppy. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's a little puppy and I put the words there. And so this is how I storyboard out my book. I like to make it big. Some people make little cartoon strips and storyboard their books out that way. But this is how I start with my ideas. I put the words down and then I start sketching my ideas for what I want in the book. And then that becomes the final painting later. So it's a huge step process. The words flow out, but the artwork is what takes forever. And so I've been always my dad always said I was a very detailed artist, even as a little girl. So putting all the little details in each art piece is very important. And every art piece has a little hidden surprise in there for the kids to look for, like little bears hiding in the woods or, baby orcas swimming by. And I really just wanted to be able to capture the minds of the children. And they do, I hear feedback from parents saying the kids just sit there and look at the art, So I put a totem park in the background there, and little orcas swimming by. So that's really fun. I love that process of watching my book starting to come to life. It's really your brainchild that you're making. These are my babies. When my first book came and it was printed and I was walking around, I was like, oh, my brainchild, I love you. And my kids are just laughing at me.
I completely understand. We have a question from our comment. Is the artwork watercolor paint?
It is. I discovered watercolor pencils and I have them all right here. That you can be able to get really fine and points in there. I sharpen my pencils a lot so I could get really sharp, clear. I mean, it's really hard to draw eyelashes and eyebrows, so you really need really sharp points. And then I have my watercolors that I use often that I put in my own palette and made a little, what do you call that, to show what color they are. And so that's I've been using that on all my art. And I really like these watercolor paintbrushes because they come in all different sizes, but you can fill them with water, so you never run out. And on my first book, I was dipping and painting, but with this one, I can draw with my watercolor pencils and then dip it in some paint there and just really be able to be free and fluid with the art instead of always having to stop and refill my cup or maybe it might spill all over my art, So I really like bringing these to the youth too when I go teach art in the schools, and they just love these.
Where could you get watercolor brushes like that?
I got them on Amazon. I would go to the art store all the time, Daniel Smith here in Seattle, but now since COVID, I just really started trying to search elsewhere. And I also go to Bic Art. They sell pencils, single pencils, so I use black more than anything. And I run out of, or if I'm painting a forest or something, I'll run out of all my greens. And so I'll be able to just buy one color to replace the colors that I'm missing. So any art store pretty much has them, but you have to get high quality stuff. You can't get the cheap stuff. It's not even worth it. Not even worth it. Especially if you want to produce high quality art pieces, you have to use the top of the line art supplies. And I was able to get grants to be able to buy a nice computer. You really need a nice computer to lay out your books, and to just make them pop, and really good art supplies. It really makes a difference, because my first art pieces, I was really excited to start working on my book, but I was raising 3 children. I was a single mom raising 3 kids, so all of my money went to paying rent and feeding them, and car payments, and just living in Seattle. And so I wrote a grant, and I was able to go out and just be free with what I wanted to buy as an artist. And it was such night and day from I would use just regular color pencils, not watercolor pencils. And the watercolor pencils just really made my art come to life. And my cousin, I was actually asking him to illustrate for me, and he's really into acrylics, and he was trying to teach me acrylics, and I wasn't getting it, and he wasn't getting what I was trying to say. And so he's like, Sondra, you're a good artist, why don't you try to do it yourself? And I was like, well, I don't know what to try. I mean, how do I do it? Where do I start? And he's like, just go to the art store and just start trying stuff out. You might like oils, you might like watercolors, you might like acrylics. And for my hand painted shoes, I used a lot of fabric acrylics and regular acrylics. And for the drums, you use acrylics. But for really just making my books come to life, I really fell in love with watercolors.
Our next question is also from the comments. How did publishing your first book change your process of writing, if it did?
It didn't change much. I wrote my book, and then I slowly illustrated. And at the time, I had the excuse that I was raising 3 little ones, but they're all grown now, and so I don't have that excuse. But now I'm running a nonprofit for the Haida language, and so that consumes a lot of my time. So every day I just try to get a little bit done, but it's still the same process. It hasn't changed. I say I'm going to get it done faster. This book took me 10 years, and this book took me 10 years. And so I'm really trying not to let these other books take 10 years. Writing grants has helped. So like the book my son and I are doing together, that there's a 2-year time that we have to get it done, and he's illustrating it for me, so I don't have to worry about that. But my book that I'm illustrating, I really want to get it done sooner. I think if I really sit down and plug away a little bit every day, it's about 16 illustrations per book, and that's a lot of art, especially when you put all the details into it, and composing songs in the Haida language is getting easier and easier as I do it. But that was a huge part of the process, and that's what took so long as well, is just learning my language and learning how to sing in my language, new songs.
Our next question is in the same vein. How do you handle editing and proofreading of your writing?
I go to my friends. A lot of times my husband really helps out, or my mom. but, you know, when I self-published my book, you know, it was nice when Sealaska helped do the editing for this one, because they really fine-tuned it. But I missed a few things in this book. Like, I hired somebody to format my book for me, and it's missing a whole sentence. I pulled out a new book to read, you know, to a program online, and I noticed out of the blue that it was missing a whole sentence. So I contacted them, and they fixed it for me. But and then, you know, when I was still learning my language, I misspelled some of the Haida words, and it just makes a hot flash go over my whole face. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, what am I just don't like that. So I would really like it if it was, I had more, even though the books are good, I can see mistakes. Luckily, as a someone who's self-published, I can easily fix that myself. And so I just learned, I go to people that, like Sealaska made the books, and Kathy Dye was really wonderful in giving me advice on what to do. And I just followed the directions that we created this book together, and, you know, laid it out together. And so I just followed that process on my next book, and continue to follow that process on the other books I'll be creating.
You've mentioned that you include songs in your books. Do you create the song to fit the story, or do you create the story to fit the song?
I definitely create the song to fit the story. Like my first book, Killer Whale Eyes, didn't have a song for a long time. And there was a publishing house in Canada that really wanted to publish this book. But it sat in their publishing house for 3 years because I'm not enrolled in my father's tribe in Canada. And so it was an Indigenous, I only go for Indigenous publishing houses. I just want to keep it Indigenous. And so their funders didn't want to fund a non-Canadian. And so they sent me my book back. But during that time, it really gave me insight and ideas to, you know, that this would be a good book to add a song to. And I really always liked singing and writing songs. And so I wrote the poem, I'm a child of the ocean, I hear her calling to me, through the song of my relative Killer Whale, I hear her calling to me. And then I went up to Heidelberg for my Uncle Miju's 100th birthday, and I pulled my cousin Ben aside, and he helped me translate it with Uncle Ben, and he helped me pronounce the words, and or Uncle Miju. And then I came home and I just sat with the words and the poetry for a while, and I just started playing around with tunes, and it just started coming out of me. And that was the first song I ever really composed or wrote in Haida. I'd written other songs, like gospel songs before, but nothing really ever went anywhere with that. But just the being able to sing in Haida and creating new songs in Haida. And I wanted to sing, you know, old songs and put them in my book. But then again, my mother said, you can't do that. There's permissions around a lot of the books. And so, you know, she's a good teacher. She taught me how to respect our culture and our people. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write my own song. And so that's now, you know, how it happened here is laid it out for how all my other books go. And so Kundlan, the wolf pup with moonlight in her eyes, she was a rescue, and she was really anxious. And so I started singing this old Scottish lullaby that my Chana used to sing to me, and I translated it into Haida. And so, you know, when I would sing that song to her, it would calm her down and put her right to sleep. So I translated it. It goes, Kadih lagiti Hangi hiwi wala kongiwan's hagang asa ako'y asa sana andang kang haudanga ang hari la hudigitigi hagan iyi. And I think that will help put some babies to sleep.
Absolutely. That was gorgeous. And that actually brings me to my next question, which is, since you write the songs for your books, do you have anywhere that you have either recorded and posted online or a hard CD copy of you singing the songs so that people who buy the books and read the songs know how it's supposed to sound?
Yes, I do. That was one thing that Sealaska helped me do, was come up with first it was just a song of me singing, or a CD of me singing the song, but then I did an audiobook CD to go with it, because a lot of educators and teachers were saying we don't know how to read these words, the Haida words, correctly. And so yeah, I have I include an audiobook CD with each purchase of my book. But you know, we're starting to, compact discs are becoming obsolete, and so you can get my audiobook digitally through all of the streaming. You can get it at Amazon. You can buy it from me on my Bandcamp page. I have Lovebirds and Killer Whale Eyes, and I also have my 2 albums on there as well, which in my first album I included both songs from these 2 books. But I'm still in the process of finishing my next 2 books, which will include the Scottish Lullaby and then a new composition, which I haven't even come up with a tune yet, but for the Bear Sun book.
Well, I'm sure everybody is very curious, but can you possibly read a little excerpt from one of your books for us?
Sure. Let's see. I always like to give honor to my Nani and Shana, so I will read. Let's see. Okay, I'll start here. One day, Eagle said to Raven, "I want to be with you forever." Raven smiled and thought for a bit. She replied, "I know just the trick we can use. This trick was passed down from my wise Kunisi, which means ancestor. You know, the one who stole the sun from that greedy chief." So Raven led Eagle to a stream where she used her Kunisi's trick to transform them into small pine needles. And together they gently floated down the stream. Just so happened that 2 women were gathering water from the very same stream on the very same day. As they sipped the cool, clean water, one drank Raven pine needle and the other drank Eagle pine needle. 9 months passed, and a baby girl was born to a Haida woman from the Raven clan. In another village close by, a baby boy was born to a Haida woman from the Eagle clan. She sang many songs for her little baby. One of the songs he seemed to like the best, for he would smile every time she sang it. And of course, it was a lovebird song. Dangalki, Yala Ditsaka, Dangalki, Yala Ditsaka, Dangalki. Dangaki. Yala ditaka dangaki. Good a klang nada san. Good a klang nada san. Good a klang nada san. Dangaki. And that means Dangaki, together forever. The Yalai, which that's a word we share with our Tlingit brothers and sisters. The Yalai, my raven, the Tsakai, my eagle, Gurethlang Ngada Sang, as lovebirds we will fly. And you'll have to buy the book to find out the rest. But it's a love story about my Haida grandparents. And they were Haida lovebirds. She was from the Raven clan, he was from the Eagle clan. And so they were inseparable in life. And they actually passed away on the same day of natural causes in the year 2000. And he left in the morning and she left right before midnight on the same day. So it's just a love story taking them through the animal, human, and spirit realm. And so on my last page, I did a painting of them going to heaven together. And they really, even though they've been gone 20 years, I really feel their spirit and their connection. And my Nani was a powerful prayer warrior. And she taught us how to pray. My Chana, he was a cook on the Navy ships. Happy Veterans Day, Chana. And he was always such a good cook. You could see all our traditional foods, our salmon eggs and seaweed and herring eggs on kelp, smoked salmon, salmon berries, soap berries. I had to put in the pilot bread crackers, even though that's not traditional. And goose tongue, which is the beach asparagus. So it's pretty exciting. And then I added all their great grandbabies because they never met all of them. But there's so many stories, like the way we tell stories as people, there was always hidden stories behind everything. And so, yeah, the fact that she could even have children and grandchildren was a miracle. So I wanted to honor her in that way. And that's how pretty much all my stories are, just telling the story of our people and just intertwining all kinds of little secrets and fun stuff.
Well, that was beautiful. Both the singing, the artwork, the story, like amazing work. If you just tuned in, we are talking with Haida artist and singer Sondra Segundo. If you have questions, please type them in the comments and I'll read them off. If you're interested in finding out more about Sondra's work, like her books, go to sondrasegundo.com or her Etsy page, haidaartbysondra.com. You can also find some of her work at Sealaska Heritage Online Store, sealaska-heritage-store.myshopify.com. All purchases from our store support both the artist and SHI art programming that helps the community and keeps our ancient art practices alive. SHI has also started construction of its art campus in downtown Juneau, which will expand opportunities for education and art. If you're interested in making a donation to the Arts Campus or submitting a letter of support to the Juneau Assembly for city funding, please visit www.sealaskaheritage.org/campus. All right, for our next question. Here we go. So you've mentioned writing in Khatkill, and in our previous video, I believe you mentioned that you wanted to write a story completely in Khatkill. Would that story be a traditional story from our ancient histories, or would it be a brand new story that just happens to be in Khatkill?
it would probably be one of the books that I have in my mind already, and I'm already thinking about maybe doing Kunjaras Has a Baby, because I haven't really written it yet. It's still in my brain, and so now would be the perfect time to start. You know, I'm at the point in language learning where I'm really trying to make it more of a practice and building sentence structure, and you know, I got good practice in with the songwriting, and so it's just taking it to that next step. And it would also be cool to just translate all my books into Haida and just have a Haida version of those as well, you know. Especially for my little grandbaby, you know, when she starts reading, she could just be reading in Haida, and we could read to her in Hatkil. And I like the fact that my uncle wrote books for us a long time ago that we still use today, and Haida stories. You know, I keep all these books around me because they did this for us back in the day in the 70s, and we use these books today. And so that's, you know, basically what we want to do for our future kids is keep the stories alive.
Can you tell us more about the books that you showed us?
Yeah, this one, my uncle Robert Kogo, he wrote a book about gathering food and the preparation of food. And he was an expert in speaking and writing. Like he tells a story about a Haida cooking feast, Hadas Hawaii. And he, in the olden days, Haidas, Hadas, usually congregated in food gathering places or fishing villages. It was during these times in spring, in and summer, that the people would watch for a change to sponsor a big barbecue. And so it tells a story about how they would barbecue and put the rocks to have a big beach barbecue. And, you know, just talks about all the different seafood. He even illustrated some stuff in there. And I like how he taught us about I don't know if it's in this book. Well, the numbers in the months, oh no, it's in the months book. Every month was named for, I think it's in my bedroom, but every month was named for what happened during that month. Like when the geese flew in, then it would be the month the geese flew in. So everything is very action, you know, and it was really interesting how he introduced the counting, how he explains how the words, even the numbers, are very descriptive to what we needed it for. Like you will note that 10 cloth turns into the 10 unit tlalai. Since 20 is tlalai stung, you can count up to 10 units as 30, 40, 50. When you get to 100, you say tlalai tla. And the Haidas use their words in conjunction with addition, subtraction, or division. There was also a measuring unit in Haida used extensively. This was the fathom, or 6 feet. They called this hel hagi, or the length of both arms outstretched. There was also 3 feet unit called dask asket, or 1 yard. And so it's kind of interesting how he's teaching us how our people did measurements.
Awesome. Our next question is, do you have any recommendations for Indigenous publishing firms? Since you mentioned some before.
I don't really have any. No, I found one in mid-America, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but one of my Native friends recommended them to me, and I was wanting to reach out to them. But you know, they're popping up more and more. There weren't as many when I first started my journey as a Native artist. And so, yeah, I don't really know too many, but you can search it up and then ask around to people who went through publishing companies.
All right. Our next question is, you've mentioned that the words kind of just flow out when you're writing. So does writing energize you, or does it exhaust you when you're finished?
It's definitely energizing. And it's super exciting when I start seeing the books come to life, the art pieces that have been in my brain. When you're an artist, you have these ideas in your brain and how things should look. And sometimes it's hard to get it out on paper. A lot of the art I had to do 2 or 3 times, but yeah, I love it. When I create a new story out of the blue, it's a very inspired day. It's usually a day that I'm feeling happy and free and comfortable, and that's when a lot of my art just flows out of me, when I'm just feeling it in a peaceful place. You know, just like when Killer Whale Eyes flowed out of me, I really found peace in my life. And before then, I couldn't even focus on writing or doing art because my life was just like, ah. And then when I found that peace and that quiet and like, ah, and I started laughing and smiling and singing more, that's when all those inspiring thoughts would just start coming through me. And yeah, it's definitely energizing. It's a good question. It's going to make me think.
My next question is, what is your writing kryptonite?
Like
something that either you might struggle with, or something that never fails to like make you emotional.
It would be definitely having another job all the time. I always have another job, and so it takes me away from my writing and my art. But now my job that I do is for the language, so I love that. And before I was working in the school system, which I love too, but yeah, I guess it's always maybe me making excuses. I don't know. Time is my kryptonite. It's like always hard to just find that time to sit. And you really have to just create this space so when you're ready to just sit and do the art, or you're feeling inspired, then the tools are just right there. And so I really created a nice art space with all my paints and all my Haida books and everything, so that everything is right here when I'm ready to just sit down and get to work. And it's nice when I do have those days to just sit down and work on my books. I just go into a zone, a really happy, peaceful creating zone, and my hand just starts going, and before you know it, it's done. So if I just put a little bit in every day, or when I have nothing to do, I'm trying to clear out December to really work on my books. You really have to carve out time. And especially I have grants. I got a grant to finish Kundlan, and me and my son got a grant to finish Tanget. And so I got to get those done by a certain time. And so that's really inspiring as well.
That brings me to my next question, which is, how many hours a day do you write?
Well, now I'm on to grant writing, so I would say I write a lot every day. And it's not just for the books anymore. It's for grants. It's for, I do a lot of teaching in the community now. So there's a lot of planning and writing and what I'm going to be doing step by step with the students, and just, writing plans out. And yesterday I tried to sit down and write, but I just wasn't inspired and it wasn't coming out of me. And so I just put my pen and paper down and went on to do something else. It's just really when I'm inspired to write. So when I do the writing for the books, it's very inspired writing. And when I'm doing work for the Haida Roots nonprofit, you have to think and get creative, but it's more like a job. Yeah, as you could probably understand when you have to write something up for your job.
That brings me to a question that I know I definitely have difficulty with. Have you ever been inspired for a story that you're not currently writing in the middle of writing something else? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's always what I'm doing. Like I was always writing these two books at the same time, Killer Whale Eyes and Lovebirds, and now I'm doing Tanget and Kunlan, the wolf pup, and now I'm getting inspired to do Kunjadas Has a Baby because I'm really excited to paint and incorporate my grandbaby in that book. It's really cool because in that story, it's coming from the orca's view. And I'm really excited to have that scene in the water and really trying to get my daughter, who's an artist too, to maybe collaborate with me on that. I mean, it's coming to that time in my life where we got to pass on the knowledge to the next generation. And so, but if not, I think that I don't want to force my kids to do things they don't want to do. And she said she was interested in it, but it's just all timing. And now I'm starting to think about that book. Well, I'm trying to finish these two books. I'm like, okay, no. I got to focus. I got to finish these books. And so I decided with Kundlan, I want to paint. There's paintings that I'm more excited about than others. And so I tend to go to the end of the book to do those paintings first. But with this one, I'm really trying to do it in order. One, the next page at a time, and then just try to finish it that way. And it's so, such a good feeling when the book is finally done and you put it all together and get it printed out. And it just feels so good to have it in your hands and to be able to get out in the community and share.
Definitely understand that feeling. My next question is, what was an early experience where you learned that language really had power?
It was probably mostly when I was singing in church, and the words to the songs were really powerful to me, and so when I would sing, I would always sing "Oh Holy Night" at Christmas time, and when I sang that song one time, I just felt like I had an out of body experience, and I opened my eyes and I came rushing back. And I just realized how powerful the words I was singing, and so, especially when you sing in Haida and speak in Haida too, it's even more powerful. And so the way that I say things or word things are really powerful. And you could say a 3 to 5 word sentence and it's just, really a strong sentence. And gets the point across faster than just babbling on and on and on. And you really, when you do picture books, there's more art and less words. And that's what I tend to prefer anyway. It's more the visual storytelling.
My next question is, what was your favorite book growing up?
I liked Marie Sendak, Chicken Soup with Rice. Happy once, happy twice, happy chicken soup with rice. In November, it's so nice. That was my favorite book. I love the art, and he just really is such a good storyteller and really captures the minds of the kids. So I still love Marie Sendak books, and those are in my kids' favorite books coming up. I'd read Where the Wild Things Are to them and really get into character with them. And they really love that book every night. Read Where the Wild Things Are, you know.
I definitely agree. I love that book.
And that's why I actually put little characters in my book. You'll see little ravens and eagles, and always looking at the, now that you say that, I'm starting to see that's why I like to add like little animals everywhere. Because I always just like to search for the little animals he hid in his paintings. Nobody's ever asked me that, so thank you. I never thought about that.
Speaking of the little animals and things that you put in your artwork, do you put in little Easter eggs or little cameos or stuff specifically for certain people to find, or is it just because you want to put one in there?
Yeah, I wanted to honor my kids, and well, when I was doing this book, my kids were always around me, and they would run into my art room and check out what I was doing, and then take off. And what my son, he said, "What if they don't believe you're my mom, Mom?" You know. He's so cute. He was just a little guy, and so I was like, "Okay, honey," and I was, let's see what page it was. So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna put your name in the seaweed on the beach," and you can barely see it, but the kids really like that story. It's hard for me to show you from here, but so their names are in there. And then I hid my sister just had her baby, and she's in the longhouse with her baby, and you know, this was my dog who just passed away, but she just had puppies. And it's more for fun, I guess, you know, show my love for, I always put little crosses everywhere just to show my thanks to Yeshua and Creator. And yeah, a lot of it could be for me, a lot of it could be for other people. You know, if you look at, as the canoe's going by, you can see a mom and her little baby cubs picking berries, and I put that in a lot. In this one, I put the golden spruce because I had just read about the golden spruce, and so I added the golden spruce into this book next to a totem pole, and it's going into the village. You could see a stone pathway going back to the village, and yeah, I put little designs in the rocks and stuff like that. Yeah.
Kind of brings me to my next question, which is from our comments. What kind of research do you do when you're writing a new book, and how long do you spend on researching before starting?
I don't know if I do much research. It just flows out of me. The research is just in my DNA already, in our DNA as Haida people. You know, I've obviously was always a storyteller ever since I was a little girl, and I didn't realize that until I got a lot older. So it was just me just telling stories that were in my heart, or, you know, when I started to write Killer Whale Eyes, it was really annoying me that there were so many non-Indigenous people writing our stories. And I was born and raised as a Haida woman. You know, I was raised by my mom, my aunties, my grandma, my great grandma. And so I was raised as a Haida woman. So all the stories and songs were already taught to me. And so that's just who I was. And so a lot of people really enjoy that part of it, having an Indigenous person giving an Indigenous perspective. And, you know, when Northwest Girl Choir contacted me about singing this song with them, they said, we have been singing a song that we thought was by a Native person, but what we found out, we were horrified to find out it was written by a European person. I'm like, you're surprised? A lot of our songs and stories are written by European people, you know, and so they weren't even getting it right either. And I wanted our kids to be represented correctly. You know, of course, I looked at art, and before I made this, and I really researched, you know, I looked at our hats and our button blankets and carvings, and I can see all the mistakes that I don't like anymore, but I don't know if anybody else can see them. But I really just wanted our kids to be represented correctly. You know, I wanted us to meet somebody to tell our stories, somebody else. I'm not somebody else telling our stories, but us telling our stories. And I hope that this encourages other people to start writing stories about our people. And I might even write a story that doesn't have anything to do with our culture one day, you know, maybe just about 2 little kittens or something.
Let's be real, you'll include a song in it too.
You know it, you know it.
All right, my final question of the evening, is there anything you want to share with us that you haven't yet before we go?
I wanted to share about I'm really excited about my son and I collaborating on this book called Tanget. And it's about him basically. And I told a story about him, and the fact that he's helping me to illustrate it is huge. And you could see he's done a lot of practice with anatomy. And so it'll be interesting to see it through his eyes, and just teaching him the step-by-step process of illustrating a book. It's been kind of, he said it's hard. He's, you know, trying to storyboard it out, and he has his own style. I have my own style. That's the second page of the book where I'm saying, Hauksta, you know, get up and cook. He's a really good cook, and he usually cooks everybody the most delicious meal. He's really grumpy like a bear. He eats all my smoked salmon. He likes to hibernate in his room. And so it's pretty much telling a story about him. And I wrote a poem for him, but I haven't come up with a tune yet, but it's that bear son of mine, whom I love beyond time. His name fits him well, that bear son of mine. It goes, Tanget dina ijang la di kuyadang dingeslu. Hok ang lagang Tanget dina ijang. And so now I have to like come up, and that's a whole nother ball game, coming up with a tune for the songs. That's another ball game of trying to like find the music, and it has to come to you, you know. Everything's a process. So I just want to share that. I made him finish that sketch just so I could share it with you guys. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you. It looks amazing, and I can't wait to see the finished product. All right, thank you very much for being with us and answering our questions. The rest of your videos for the Virtual Artist in Residence series will be on YouTube on the Sealaska Heritage Institute channel. And if you are interested in being a virtual artist in residence, the applications are still open for the upcoming months. And if you'd like to be featured, please apply. You can apply at sealaskaheritage.com, or excuse me, sealaskaheritage.wufoo.com/forms/shi-virtual-artist-in-resident application. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.